Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The Indivisible Guide was a really influential part of how Democrats and liberals approached power, and Congress in particular, after Trump and the Republicans won power in Washington in the 2016 election. Well, now that we've had the midterm elections and the Democrats have taken back some of that power, they've taken control of the House, Indivisible tonight has published version 2.0 of the Indivisible Guide. It's called Indivisible on Offense, a practical guide to the new Democratic House. Joining us now is Ezra Levin. He's a co-author of the Indivisible Guide. This is his first interview since the new handbook was released tonight. Mr. Levin, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So the last guide was defense, basically. It was about how Democrats could stop Republicans in Congress and the Trump administration from getting everything they want, given that they had all the levers of power. This one is about offense. What is the tactical difference?
We are incredibly excited for this tactical difference because the first 2 years, the last 2 years that we've spent, have been on defense, like you're saying. We didn't have the House, the Senate, or the presidency. So when we put out the original Indivisible Guide, we started from this place of weakness. We knew we didn't have agenda-setting power. Democrats did not have agenda-setting power. Instead, they had the power to respond. But now that's different. Because of the House of Representatives, because that House is in control of Democrats' hands, they can go on offense in two key ways. They can go on legislative offense, means they can pass bills. They can introduce bills. They can get co-sponsors. They choose what gets a vote. And they can go on oversight offense. So all the stuff that has been going on under this administration in the dark for 2 years without any real oversight, that ends. Shine a light on it. And that's the big, big difference heading into the next 2 years.
But in terms of legislative offense, I mean, you say explicitly in the guide that we can safely assume that the vast majority of good legislation passed in the House will die in the Republican-controlled Senate. If nothing that they pass will actually become law or policy, then how much offense is that?
So on legislative, there are two types. So this gets complicated, which is why we put out a guide, right? So there are two types of legislative offense. One is there are must-pass bills that are going to go through in the next Congress. Things like a budget. In order for government to keep on running, they've got to pass a budget, and every budget requires both Republican and Democratic votes. Now, what we're seeing now is in the House of Representatives, Democrats are going to be able to put their stamp on any budget that goes through. That's a chance to actually get real wins, not just pass bills that are going to sit in the Senate, but actually change law. Now, the second thing, though, is what you're pointing to here, that a Republican senator or President Trump is not going to sign a good progressive bill. And look, I think that's right. But the next 2 years are going to be when the Democratic Party debates what is our policy on the environment, what is our policy on immigration, what is our policy on taxes, so that when we get control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency in 2021, when we have a unified progressive government, we know what our first bill is going to be. The next 2 years are debating that, and that's why these legislative vehicles that we're going to see progressives introduce over the course of the next 2 years are so important.
In the first guide, I think the thing that made it catch on the way that it did, and we talked about this at the time that it came out, was that it was a little bit counterintuitive. You're telling people don't pick the worst person in Congress who bugs you the most and then go bug them. You're only allowed to talk to your own member of Congress because other representatives don't care what you have to say if they don't represent you. But it was also very practical in terms of how to most effectively communicate with and pressure your representative, whether they were on your side or not. Do you feel like at Indivisible you guys learned anything that you were either doing wrong or that you might have rethought over the past couple of years based on the way that advice was implemented?
Yeah, so one thing that we saw early on in the Congress last year is that people were just overwhelmed with the number of folks who were showing up at these Indivisible meetings. If you remember the original guide, we said, if you can get 10 people together, that would be great.
Yeah.
We saw some folks with hundreds and then thousands of folks showing up. So figuring out how to take folks who are brand new to this movement, who have not been engaged in political activism before, and teaching them how to do the basics of just organizing. How do you develop a leadership structure? How do you build for the long haul? I think that's what a lot of the first 2 years were about. The people who have been out in the streets marching and then getting behind candidates and registering voters and getting out the vote, they're not professional political organizers or professional political folks. They're just people in their communities who are organizing to take back control of their communities. And so one of the things we're trying to emphasize in this new guide is precisely that. This is not going to be something where we just flip a switch and suddenly we accomplish everything we want to do. We have to fight on our home turf. So the thing that does not change is something you brought up here, which is, look, we're in a representative democracy. And what that means is, like them or hate them,
talk to your own representative.
Talk to your own representative, because your representative is your voice in the House, your 2 senators, your voice in the Senate. And that's where we're going to have power. And one of the really exciting things about our moment right now is it doesn't matter if your member has been there for years, if they were just elected. They sit on subcommittees, they sit on committees that have power over oversight. They can actually launch investigations. They can use hearings in order to really shine a light. And that's what the opportunity is for the next 2 years.
Indivisible 2.0, Indivisible on offense. Esper Levin, thank you.
It is Thursday, the 15th of November of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, folks. A little bit of spice in your life. Oh, my. Talking about spicy. Donald Trump's been up early just rage tweeting, which means someone's getting indicted today. Somebody close. And even Junior's been out there making proclamations about just let California burn. You notice no red states are burning. Wow. I guess he's going to jail too. Trump is making the claim that people go out into their cars after voting, put on a hat, a shirt, and come back in and vote again. Which, if I put that through the translator, and it looks like Jared's been voting in drag also. He is registered as a woman. Just saying. So whatever they say that we do, they are doing. Every single time. All right. Well, looks like the Khashoggi killers will be getting the death penalty because dead men tell no tales. Get the hitmen. Don't get the planners, because we know if it was a death penalty for the people who are responsible for Khashoggi's killing, they would have to find a new monarch. Oh, yeah. So, but you know how that one will work out. Looks like Pence is meeting Vlad over in Asia somewhere, and I think it's, something's going to be happening, and Pence needs to be briefed. He needs to know the lay of the land, as they say. And I don't know, he and Mother will have to learn the Russian Orthodox Bible, and that is in Cyrillic. I've looked. So it's not a terribly difficult written language to comprehend. You'll get it really quick. I'm serious. So, well, that was at the top, the Indivisible people. And they are going on the offense. All right? And I would think that part of going on the offense is that maybe changing the quarterback when the quarterback has no injury. Oh, I know. She's damaged goods. They said the same thing about Hillary. Damaged goods. Beat up on a woman for a decade or more and then get rid of her because she wears the scars of battle with honor? What the hell? And it's the conservative blue dog hyenas. Okay, yeah. They have their own party now, the blue dog hyenas. That's what I call them. Which are actually part of the the white bro party, the wigged out white bro party. Because the blue dogs, actually some of the blue dogs, the blue dog hyenas, are in the wigged out white bro party. And then the rest of us are in what I call the Star Wars bar scene caucus. Because that's where, really the Democratic power is, truly, among all of us. I don't know, mutants from another planet or other planets. Which is worse, because it's plural. And they don't like plurality at all. Okay, well, it's, it is Thursday morning. And I assure you, I have not been hitting those French 77s. Not this early, okay? Even though it's, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon over there in, oh, no, I guess it's even later than that in Paris. Well, we'll get to the virtual French 77s later, but what a night. Oh, my gosh. Had a little bit of a power outage here at some point during the evening, and what they're doing is they're doing rolling blackouts throughout the whole of the West Coast now. Because the power companies, in terms of, how the capitalistic system is that you offer services, and then when you get people sucked in, you then deny services or pull back a few services, make a few dollars there, a few dollars here. Next thing you know, you're like, bigger than God. Okay? And they've discovered that their equipment, because of deferred maintenance, in which, to make a few dollars here, a few dollars there, we'll fix it later. And they always have to pay more when these conflagrations occur, So whole communities incinerated in about, 40 minutes. Death tolls up to, 56, I think. With more to come. Pacific Gas and Electric and the other power companies up here in the Northwest have been doing rolling blackouts, so, that their equipment doesn't spark. They are able to track through the transmission line surges and whatnot, and they can see the signature of when there is a spark, or when there will be a spark, or when there has been a spark. And apparently we were caught up in that rolling blackout. My sister was out of town, and I was taking care of their dogs. And I noticed yesterday the lights were blinking in her house. The clocks and everything were blinking. And I saw, oh, wow, the electricity clicked off here. I wonder why that was. And it turns out that, indeed, they are doing rolling blackouts. And I will consider that to be a good thing, except for the bad thing is that, well, in our new a-go-go society, you actually need electricity running to be able to do an electrical type of endeavor like a radio station. Analog, terrestrial, internet, what have you. So I apologize for that. It was truly out of my hands. And it was even greater than an act of God, because usually an act of God is what the internet company tells you. Okay? At least in my little world. But there's a bigger world, apparently. And an act of God is the power company, truly, in the end. Okay, what's on the rest of the menu here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays? A new bill would ban landlords from discriminating against people who receive rental help. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of these weird... Is it prosperity gospel? Anybody who is not, quote, financially successful is tainted by the devil. I wonder. Trump plots to cancel $100 million worth of crucial medical research into developing new vaccines and treating diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Yeah, you know what that's about. He's catering to some weird religious crackpot theory. Okay? Because he thinks it's going to get him more votes. What a weirdo. And Facebook secretly funded a right-wing firm to attack critics by linking them to George Soros. Wow, they're using a right-wing anti-Semitic trope to go after their critics. Who would have thought? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the new Texas House Speaker apparent has a troubling, bigoted history. Well, that's shocking, isn't it? And an Arkansas GOP lawmaker busted for fraud offers to help build Trump's border wall in exchange for a lighter sentence. Sounds like Papillon, doesn't it? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. If you look there to the rightish of the page, you will find the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And she has 2 shows on Saturday, by the way, At the Table with Kelly Lincoln at 3 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. on the East. And a few hours later, she teams up with Ricky May for the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour, 9 p.m. West Coast, midnight East Coast, for a power hour of complete power. Then look to the leftish of our page at netrootsradio.com. The contribute button is there, and thank you for your generosity. We got a couple more Patreons and people who were donating previously for a while ago and have re-upped. So thank you so much. A small recurring donation helps us pay the bills here, and I got to tell you, the bills are going up. They're not going down. I just got a notice, and that's why I'm making these entreaties even more plaintive. So thank you. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. That is taken care of by Tom. And would you check out his podcast, The Coffee Cast with Tom? And that is played on Netroots Radio on Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the West Coast. That would be 1 p.m. on the East. And then noon on Sunday, which would make it 3 p.m. on the East Coast. So there you go. And you can also find the Coffee Cast on the Progressive Voices Network and iTunes and a few other places. But if you want to listen to it here on Netroots Radio, you can. And when you need to listen to it at your leisure, which is maybe outside of the leisure time that is allotted for Netroots Radio, pick up his podcast where you can. Okay, so you can also follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. And then you can also follow the show on Facebook. And we are also on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeart, iTunes. I might have said that already, but wherever. And I've been getting a notice about Libsyn linking up with Pandora, so maybe we should reactivate our Libsyn account now and be on Pandora too. I'll look into that. Okay. Let's see here. What do we have in terms of our first story? Why don't I have that up already? I usually do. Okay, this is it right here about banning landlords from discriminating against people who get some rental help. Well, this is now a bipartisan bill, I should mention. Bipartisan. A real bipartisan bill. Usually what bipartisan means to the Republicans is that the Democrats have to put the noose around their necks without being asked or ordered. Well, in this situation, we are looking at an article out of Think Progress, by the way, by Danielle McLean. It is common practice for landlords to deny housing to people who use federal housing vouchers to pay their rent, making it difficult for low-income families to find a safe and affordable place to live. A newly introduced bill that has garnered bipartisan support in the Senate could make this kind of discrimination illegal. Does McConnell know about this? He's going to put the kibosh to this. This is right in his wheelhouse. He hates this stuff. More than 5 million people, including low-income families, elderly or disabled people, veterans, and other vulnerable populations, have access to federal housing choice vouchers, which help cover the cost of their rent and allow them to access safe and sanitary housing in the private market. However, a recent report by the Urban Institute found renters who receive such vouchers are denied housing by landlords at startling rates. Well, of course, every landlord knows that those people don't take care of their property. All they're going to do is just mess it up. They won't clean. They'll never flush the toilets, and when they do, they'll clog the toilets. Oh, my God. And look how they look. It's just going to be, I don't want that in my property. Yeah, that happens. Now, on the other hand, I don't understand the issue. I mean, we all know money not only talks, it swears. So generally, people are happy. You mean you have a voucher and you have a guarantee to pay your rent? I want you. So I wonder what else is a factor in this equation. Economic anxiety? I think that maybe that's one way of putting it. A number of cities and states already have such discrimination protections in place, but there are no federal protections on the books, which is what the Kaine-Hatch bill provides. Wow, Tim Kaine and Orrin Hatch come together for a bipartisan agreement to help low-income renters. Wait until McConnell finds out. He hates low-income people. Well, unless he can get them to vote the way he wants them to vote, and then it's okay until they voted and he gets what he wants, and then it's like, oh, sorry, we're going to have to take away your health care because it's socialism. It's unclear whether the bill can actually pass. Like I said, Democrats will not have control of the House until the start of the next term in early January, when its Republican sponsor, Hatch, retires. It's also unclear whether Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will decide to take it up in the Republican-controlled Senate. Well, of course not. He's calling for bipartisan agreements. And bipartisan doesn't mean two party members from each party coming together to introduce a bill. Bipartisan means that we do what they tell us, when they tell us, without any guff. Crockett of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Once again, the Trump administration is ready to sacrifice human health at the altar of anti-science extremism. The Trump administration is considering cutting $100 million worth of crucial medical research. It will slow some projects down that are vital for sick Americans, Larry Goldstein, the director of UC San Diego Stem Cell Program, told Politico, blasting the proposal by the Department of Health and Human Services to discontinue National Institutes of Health research that uses fetal tissue. Research on stem cells derived from fetal tissue is absolutely essential to medical progress. It brought us the vaccines for polio and measles, and it's currently being used to develop potential vaccines for HIV/AIDS and influenza, as well as treatments for neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, ALS, and more. You know, he's playing the cultural gambit here again, isn't he? The culture wars. This is right out of the playbook from the Bush administration. Remember all the hoopla over stem cell research? And it looks like all the same actors are involved, too. There are strict ethical guidelines on how to obtain fetal tissue, which comes from miscarriages and legal abortions, and which has unique properties that give researchers insights they often can't find elsewhere. The fetal tissue would just get thrown away if it weren't being donated to research. I think if they had their way, we'd have to have a special burial ceremony, to be honest with you. Trump is willing to throw all of that progress out the window just to pander to the same religious extremists who want to ban birth control and fertility treatments. But it doesn't, it doesn't apply to him. He's rich. Among the pro-life groups, like the Susan B. Anthony list, an extremist lobbying group that's basically like the NRA of the movement against reproductive health and rights. But groups like the Susan B. Anthony list do even worse things to science and medicine than the NRA, which has blocked government research on gun violence. The anti-choice extremist movement in America operates a lot like the climate change denial movement, making up garbage lies and peddling garbage experts in order to confuse people about the validity of well-established science. Thanks to the lobbying of these extremists, doctors are often forced to lie to women about basic health issues or use outdated medical practices. Oh, we have to bleed them. All right, give me the bleeding tube. We have to get rid of these evil spirits locked in the blood of this poor, unfortunate sinner. Bleed the witch now. They risk losing their license or even jail time if they can't figure out how to follow badly written laws that make no medical sense. And women are even arrested for miscarriages when prosecutors abuse laws that were intended to protect pregnant women. Real scientists aren't happy about this at all, and some worrying that they're being listened to just so that the Trump administration can cover its ass and do it's been planning all along. I don't know how much time anyone has to give a compelling case, one anonymous representative of the scientific organization on the listening tour told Political. Is this just a fait accompli and window dressing to say that you listen to people? Well, Trump probably taking the advice of virulently anti-choice Vice President Mike Pence and Mother, already stuffed HHS full of anti-science hacks who push abstinence-only sex education for teenagers and who wanted to fund basic family planning and health programs. And of course, the Trump administration and the GOP have tried to ruin health care across the board by systematically sabotaging Obamacare. Once again, Trump and his lackeys are working hard to sacrifice human health at the altar of right-wing extremism. So help them God.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
This final offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes by way of alternate by Matthew Chapman. I have often speculated what it is about libertarian bros, especially libertarian bros of the Silicon Valley ilk. Their natural inclination is not one of egalitarianism by any means. And I've often wondered at that. Is it because of truly a lack of education in something as simple as the humanities? I don't quite know the answer to that. We will be quantifying it soon. I hope that we'll be alive to do it, though. Well, Facebook was faced with criticism that they enabled the alt-right. So, of course, what they did then was resort to the tactics of the alt-right to silence critics, and in the most vile anti-Semitic way. Matthew Chapman begins, Facebook has come under heavy fire in recent years for how they allowed the unchecked spread of fake news and alt-right hate speech, and for their breaches of customer data security. And CEO Mark Zuckerberg has apologized for his company's role in all of this and pledged to do better. But let me jump ahead a little bit. They hired the Weekly Standard to be their fact-checkers. And so institutions like Think Progress, the Center for American Progress, they're too biased. They make fake news because they are actually reporting the news. The Weekly Standard gets to be the arbiter of what is true and not true at Facebook. That is catering to the right wing, the white right wing. According to a report in the New York Times, behind the scenes, Facebook went on the offensive to try to divert criticism that they had improperly shared data from 87 million users with right-wing strategy firm Cambridge Analytica. Not only was Facebook unwilling to take responsibility, it paid an opposition research firm tied to Republicans to go after critics of the company, and in the process, with the blessings of Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg, the firm engaged in some disgusting smear tactics. When Facebook users learned last spring that the company had compromised their privacy in its rush to expand, allowing access to the personal information of tens of millions of people to a political data firm linked to Trump, Facebook sought to deflect blame and mask the extent of the problem. And when that failed, as the company's stock price plummeted and sparked a consumer backlash, Facebook went on the attack. Zuckerberg conducted a public apology tour this last year, while Ms. Sandberg oversaw an aggressive lobbying campaign to combat Facebook's critics, shift public anger toward rival companies, and ward off damaging regulation. Facebook employed a Republican opposition firm to discredit activist protesters, in part by linking them to the liberal financier George Soros. It also tapped its business relationships, persuading a Jewish civil rights group to cast some criticism of the company as anti-Semitic. They're not anti-Semitic because we're their friends. Well, of course, Soros, the Hungarian-born Jewish billionaire who survived the Holocaust, is a frequent target for far-right anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Supporters of Trump have blamed him for orchestrating protests against the administration and financing the Honduran migrant caravan. And these falsers are dangerous. Soros was the first target of the Florida pipe bomber, Cesar Sayoc. It's time for Facebook to recognize the responsibility that comes with the immense power they hold over society and behave as an ethical corporate citizen. Yeah, nothing says ethical than taking on anti-Semitic tropes to appease the brown shirts at your door. I'm going to get to the break now and calm down, I assure you. And when we come back from the break, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Immigrants to the U.S. might lose touch with certain customs and traditions back home. But here's something else they lose. Their microbes.
When they came to the U.S., almost immediately they began losing their native microbes.
Dan Knights, a computational biologist at the University of Minnesota.
And over time, the balance shifted to the point where they were dominated by the U.S.-associated microbes.
He's referring to first- and second-generation immigrant women from the Hmong and Karen ethnic minorities in Southeast Asia. His team sequenced the DNA found in their feces, and they saw that there was an immediate decline in the number and diversity of gut microbes among the immigrants compared to their counterparts still living back home. And the decline continued over time. Now, if you're thinking, well, maybe the women just switched up their diets, started eating more hamburgers, more bacon and eggs, dietary surveys don't bear that out. The women weren't changing their diets nearly fast enough to explain the drop in diversity.
So it seems as though there's something else going on that has to do with the U.S. lifestyle. Antibiotics could be playing a role. The water supply could be playing a role. It could be other aspects of lifestyle, stress, exercise, hygiene. But we don't have enough information yet to be able to pin it down.
The results are in the journal Cell. Some of the missing microbes help digest traditional foods like tamarind, palm, and coconut, but the consequences could be more severe than indigestion.
We have evidence from many studies now, especially even causal evidence in a number of animal studies, that having the wrong set of microbes or missing the right set of microbes can cause many of the diseases that are rising in industrialized nations.
Things like obesity, metabolic disease, which we might be able to fix, he says, if we're able to solve this microbial mystery. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Here, you are nobody. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. And that's what Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, told Guadalupe Plasencia, who had been picked up by the San Bernardino, California County Sheriff's Office and handed over to ICE because there was a 10-year-old court order to appear as a witness issued for someone with a similar name. Ms. Plasencia kept protesting. She is, after all, and has been for decades, a U.S. citizen. She has nothing to do with immigration, nothing. And the agents in response mocked her and added for emphasis, "You are nothing." ICE eventually let Ms. Plasencia go after her daughter showed the ICE agents her mother's U.S. passport. Later, with the ACLU as her attorneys, Ms. Plasencia sued. And just recently, the federal government and the county sheriff's department settled her case for $55,000. Her ACLU of Southern California attorney, Adriana Wong, said, quote, "San Bernardino County residents like Ms. Plasencia have the right to live and work and raise their children in peace without fear that ICE will arrest them without cause. And the government should be held accountable when it violates people's rights." This case shows, fortunately, that still, at times, the government can be held to account. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Florida is still in recount hell.
Broward and Palm Beach counties really have been the two counties that have been plagued with most of the controversy, and one day before deadline is no exception. In Palm Beach County, overheated, old, malfunctioning machines are now causing them to recount the recount. You heard that right. They lost 1 day's worth of work, 179,000 ballots counted. Now they're having to fly in technicians. Staff are working 24/7. Now, the supervisor of elections there has never said that she's going to complete all 3 statewide recounts, only saying that she is going to finish the Senate race. Will she? It's unclear. We will definitely be looking out for that tomorrow. Now, we have seen a slew of lawsuits in this recount. You should know about at least one of them, filed by the Dems in Tallahassee. And here is what is being argued, that the state law that requires that the signature in a mail-in ballot matches the registered signature is unconstitutional.
Florida's historic recount was thrown once more into uncertainty Thursday morning when a federal judge ruled that thousands of voters whose mailed ballots were rejected because of issues with their signatures will have 2 additional days to resolve the problems and possibly have their votes counted. The judge's decision came just hours ahead of the Thursday afternoon deadline for elections officials to complete a manual recount. It's particularly notable in the too close to call Senate race, in which Governor Rick Scott leads Senator Bill Nelson by fewer than 13,000 votes. The order extends the deadline to Saturday at 5 p.m. Donald Trump continues to prove he has no idea what he's talking about. In an interview with the Daily Caller, he once again claimed you need an ID to buy groceries. Quote, "If you buy a box of cereal, you have voter ID. They try to shame everybody by calling them racist or calling them something, anything they can think of when you say you want voter ID. But voter ID is a very important thing." Trump told the website voter ID is essential, insisting that Republicans aren't winning because of, quote, potentially illegal votes. He then claimed with zero evidence that people have been changing clothes in order to vote multiple times. He said, quote, "When people get in line that have absolutely no right to vote and they go around in circles, sometimes they go to their car, put on a different hat, put on a different shirt, come in and vote again. Nobody takes anything. It's really a disgrace what's going on." End quote. In the interview, Trump also called for Florida's Broward County election supervisor Brenda Snipes to be fired after the state's gubernatorial and Senate elections were sent to a recount. The president also suggested sinister motives behind vote counting issues in Broward County. He said of Brenda Snipes, "When they call this woman incompetent, they're wrong. She's very competent, but in a bad way." Michael Avenatti, who was preparing to run for the Democratic presidential nomination, has been arrested for alleged domestic violence. He's denied the charges.
"I have never struck a woman. I never will strike a woman. I have been an advocate for women's rights my entire career, and I'm going to continue to be an advocate. I am not going to be intimidated from stopping what I am doing."
The Justice Department responded to CNN's lawsuit over the revocation of Jim Acosta's press pass, saying in a court filing that the White House rejects the idea that it can't pick and choose which journalists can be given a permanent pass to cover it.
The administration's filed a response in court ahead of this 3:30 p.m. hearing. CNN's asking, of course, for a temporary restraining order to get Acosta's press pass back right away. But the White House is saying that President Trump has, quote, broad discretion to decide who gets in and who gets out of the White House. It's a lengthy brief that's been filed with the court. But it says that the president has broad discretion here. That flies in the face, and by the way, it says the White House as well, have the same broad discretion to regulate access to the White House for journalists and other members of the public that other past administrations have.
The judge heard arguments on Wednesday afternoon and said he'd rule on the matter Thursday afternoon at 3. Retiring Republican Senator Jeff Flake said Wednesday that he will not vote to confirm the Trump administration's judicial nominees on the Senate floor or advance them in the Senate Judiciary Committee if legislation to protect special counsel Robert Mueller does not receive a Senate floor vote. Flake made the new judicial threat after he and Democratic Senator Chris Coons unsuccessfully attempted to force a Senate vote on the special counsel legislation Wednesday. But Flake's threats on judicial nominees could complicate matters in the Judiciary Committee, where Republicans have an 11-10 majority. There are currently 21 judicial nominees pending in the committee and 32 who are awaiting a floor vote. Flake said, quote, "We have been told that the bill that Senator Coons and I will move to bring up shortly is not necessary, as there have been no indications that the independence of Mr. Mueller's investigation is in jeopardy. That may have been an arguable position before last week, but it is not arguable anymore." And finally, Oxford Dictionaries has chosen the word toxic as its international word of the year, selecting it from a short list that included such politically inflected contenders as gaslighting, incel, and techlash. Explaining the choice, Oxford University Press said toxic became an intoxicating descriptor for the year's most talked about topics. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. Let's begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit, a tad lower than what they projected it to be yesterday when it was only supposed to be in the mid to low 30s. And we're a little bit lower than that. Well, that's the way weather works now, isn't it? We are expected to be a tad warmer today, though I say it's going to be in the range of mid to low 60s, just as it was yesterday. Winds are out of the east-northeast, light and variable, and they will remain light and variable for the foreseeable future. And also out of the east-northeast. Looks like we have a slight chance of rain coming tonight through tomorrow, though that relative humidity is still, well, actually relative humidity is a bit high, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So there was supposed to be a front that was breaking down, but maybe this high pressure that's been holding out the front is breaking down. Maybe I heard it wrong. I was looking at the numbers and looking at the satellite images, and we have a bit of a bubble here. But maybe we're going to get lucky, because the only chance of actual rain is at the end of next week. And it'd be nice if we had it, at least on the weekend, or, maybe at the beginning of the week, because next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we call Thanksgiving Day weekend. Okay. Or the time that we stole all this land from the indigenous peoples, and now we're going to celebrate it. You can do that too. And some people do, consciously even. Well, enough of that. The only real possibility of forecasted rain is towards the end of next week. So there. Right now, even though we have a slight chance of rain, dry conditions will continue. There is no pollen in the air to bother anybody, apparently. And though the air quality index has now inched even higher into the upper ranges of the moderate range at 85 parts per million, though the daytime UV index remains in the green low range at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.3 inches, visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 81%, and actually forecast to go a little bit more, so maybe we will get lucky and have some sort of precipitation here. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 58 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 50 degrees and cloudy. Rome is 64 and sunny. Kiev is 33 and cloudy. Kabul is 48 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 71 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 53 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 63 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 47 with a mix of fog and smoke haze. And New York is 34 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy, continuing to have gusts of 30 to 50 miles per hour, which makes it a small craft advisory. So if you happen to be on a small craft, be advised. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Josh Israel of Think Progress brings us this first offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. I suppose this is the first offering since it's the amuse-bouche, whereas weather from around the world is simply weather from around the world. And maybe we're getting that on the way from the Bistro Cafe to the Chef's Table. Okay? Maybe that's how it is. So this is really, not only technically, but truly the first offering here. Well, it looks like Representative Dennis Bonnen, Repug used a deeply racist slur in 2014 to describe Katrina refugees. Well, of course, all of them were, looters. That's right. Any person of color was a looter, whereas any white people were survivors. So if like a white couple, were leaving a Walmart with Pampers in hand, wading through waist-deep water during Katrina, and they also had like some canned food and some other things, they were survivors. But if a black couple were walking out of a Walmart with Pampers and some canned food, they were called looters. And this guy used an even more deeply racist term. State Representative and bank CEO Dennis Bonnen announced on Monday he has obtained commitments from 1,009 of the 150 House members for an upcoming vote to elect the next Speaker of the House and succeed retiring Representative Joe Strauss, another Texas repug, in January. And though that list includes 31 of the House's 67 incoming Democrats, the party gained 12 seats in the midterms, and some of the more moderate members of the GOP caucus, Bonnen's record should raise some red flags. Most notable was a 2014 incident when he used a deeply offensive ethnic slur to describe children who migrated to Texas after Hurricane Katrina. During a discussion about school resources, Bonnen, then Speaker pro tempore, used the racist term coon ass to describe Cajuns. Really? Well, of course, he would say, no one who uses that thinks it's racist. It's a term of endearment, don't you know? Really? Wow. After a Louisiana official threatened legal action against him, Bonnen offered a fake apology saying, I apologize that my use of the term is distracted from the important issue at hand with figuring out whether the federal government is going to be paying for the education of children coming from Central America and helping us secure the border. That same year, he was also a part of the Texas Conservative Coalition, otherwise known as the TCC, a group of 63 state lawmakers who filed an amicus brief urging the federal courts to uphold an anti-LGBTQ marriage ban. The pro-discrimination argument compared same-sex marriages to polygamy, pedophilia and incest, all the things that we sin has got to keep out from sinning against, but we keep sinning. He also chaired a select committee on voter identification and voter fraud. Whatever they accuse or try to pass as a law, they are doing. The polygamy, pedophilia, and incest, there's got to be something going on there. What's going on, Bonin? And now he wants to have a committee on voter identification and voter fraud. Maybe he's been voting in drag, too. Bonin made clear this week that he plans to continue the tradition of bipartisanship in the Texas House, including appointing some Democrats as committee chairs. The Dallas Morning News editorial board wrote on Tuesday that it is cautious optimistic about Bonin as speaker, with the emphasis on cautious. Given that he voted against a state law that provides free school lunch breakfast to kids, boasted on his 2018 campaign website that he received an A rating from the NRA last year, and even listed a 2001 award from Phyllis Schlafly's Texas Eagle Forum, that caution seems quite warranted now, doesn't it?
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Travis Geddes of Raw Story brings us his final offering here at the chef's tables at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A former Arkansas lawmaker convicted in a kickback scheme has volunteered his services along with 80 other federal inmates to help Donald Trump's promised border wall. Former State Senator John Woods, repug of Springdale Ark, started serving an 18-year prison term in September at a low-security facility in Fort Worth, Texas, after he was found guilty on 15 counts of a fraud scheme involving state grants. The 41-year-old disgraced lawmaker asked asked Trump to consider cutting the inmate sentences if called into action. These men are volunteering their labor for the benefit of the country. No, you're not. You're slave labor. There's no volunteering that. Come on. Haven't you ever been in prison before? Well, you are now. John made some really bad choices. Senator Ben Hester, repug of Cave Springs, who served alongside Woods in the legislature, said in a letter, shot hoping to get the guy's sentence reduced. And he's going to be with the federal government for a very long time down there in Texas. So it's probably something the inmates are talking about. You know, when you're in prison, you're always trying to find a way to get out. Well, sure he has. Some of the federal inmates have a history of violent crimes, including former Milwaukee police officer Andrew Spangler, convicted in 2007 of beating up a biracial man with 2 other off-duty officers and 2 convicted murderers. They all need to have their sentences reduced. I certainly wouldn't be supportive of sending them down there to build a wall, Hester said. I think we've got a lot of very skilled workers who are able to do that. Well, Hester served with him, so he ought to know. Yeah, he's trying to get Hester to write him a letter and support, and Hester writes a letter saying, I don't know, I served with this guy. He's a crook. All right, we are at the end of our broadcast period for the day, but Netroots Radio, of course, will broadcast on. We're going to visit with you tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio for all the breaking news all day and all night. And it will break all day and all night, so do visit with us tomorrow right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver.